Hey guys, Omni here with Wonder Woman 1984 having just come out. We talked about it here on the channel. I did my review on the film. Thought it'd be fitting to go ahead and update my DCEU rankings list that I put out. I actually don't remember when. It's been a while. So some things have definitely changed since then. So I'm mostly going to go through a lot of the changes because honestly, my top five is still the same, which at least goes to say that Wonder Woman 1984 didn't make it into my top five. So rather than go into a lot of detail on the ones that I've already talked about, you can check out the video that I did before. I apologize for the quality. There's been many a upgrades since then, so I will put the little link up here in the top. But yeah, just to kind of go over my top five, since those have not changed. My number one is Man of Steel. I thought the movie was fantastic. It's the best Dragon Ball Z movie we ever got, even though the characters themselves are a little flat at times, and it kind of relies on you needing to know who these characters are. It does something bold and interesting with a character we've seen in a different way than we've seen them before, and it was just energetic, nonstop. It actually made me motion sick the second time I saw it in theaters from all the high speed action. And honestly, I'm going to give it a plus on that. Seeing a Superman that is unleashed and not holding back and in this raw kind of form is something that fell in love with then, and I am still in love with it now. For all of its flaws, it is my favorite DCEU film. Next in line is Aquaman in my number two. That is probably the most fun I've had watching a DCEU film. The theatrical experience was phenomenal. That movie was beautiful. Again, it lacked some of the more emotional beats that I do kind of lean into. The chemistry between Amber Heard and Jason Momoa never really worked for me, but just as far as a popcorn comic book flick, this thing was Lord of the Rings underwater, Guardians of the Galaxy underwater, beautiful, energetic, popping. The visuals alone in that movie blew me away. And I'm just a fan of Jason Momoa, his energy that he brings into it, and just the sheer world and the world building that comes out of this, because it's almost its own entire universe when they go under the sea. And I can't wait to see what they do and how they expand that in the future. My number three was Shazam, which I thought was this one definitely hit me emotionally because anything involving families, family dynamics, finding your own place always hits true to me. And seeing that journey with Billy Batson and the Shazam family, I really loved it. It really nailed a lot of the comedy, even though some of it was a little cringy. It made me like the floss thing because it's definitely one of those like, oh, we're old people trying to be hip. That's hip now. And I think by that point we were all kind of tired of the flossing thing, even though I won't lie, I took my time to learn it at one point, but I loved it. Zachary Levi and the whole crew just carry that film so much. And again, despite its flaws, I think this one more so than the previous two on the list, the characters themselves carry this journey. It's fun, it's energetic, it's heartwarming at its core. It is a film about family, and that wins out to me. My number four is Wonder Woman. And even though I've had my many critiques on the finale of Wonder Woman, the original, the first, it still has a lot of emotional impacts. And I think those first two acts of that film are so strong. The chemistry between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine is just magnetic. Her opening up and learning about the world of man, and then to top it all off, and I cry every time, is when she enters the no man's land scene. That whole sequence gets me every time. My number five is Birds of Prey. I thought this movie was hilarious. I thought the action in this movie was fantastic. It was different than any of the other films that we've seen. I thought the cast was wonderful, even though Margot Robbie definitely outshined and was given a lot more focus than the actual Birds of Prey themselves. What we saw of them was great. Uh, Black Canary was amazing. The moment I got chills towards the end when she finally let out her cry. Huntress, even though it's very different, I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and oh my god, did she have me cracking up every time for how awkward she was in this. But Ewan McGregor's performance as Black Mask and Zaz was he just oozed that energy, that malice, that just and you can tell he's just having so much fun with it. I loved the film. It really I left the theater happy because I did not, based on the trailers themselves, didn't have a high expectations for it because it felt very Suicide Squad-y, and we all know how that kind of turned out. Um, and this is where things start to shift a little bit. Where previously BVS was at the bottom of my list, having rewatched it, having kind of loosened up on a lot of the things that I was kind of a stickler about, and especially knowing that the Snyder Cut is coming down the line to really kind of connect the dots into the that were absent in the Justice League, as well as understanding more of what they were going for. I can interject that into the movie now, and that's still the movie's fault. But again, I'm not judging this based on the movies themselves, their merits, based on my enjoyment of these films and the impact that they have on me. And BVS leapt up, specifically the Ultimate Edition. The theatrical one, nah. It would still be in this area of the list. It's still going to be above the bottom two that I have now. But yeah, I definitely do not hate on this movie as much as I used to. How open Zack Snyder's been here in the past few years, especially given everything that happened after Justice League, it's really helped shape my opinion on it. And you shouldn't always let a movie or creator do that because the movie should do that for itself. But I don't know. I can actually go back and rewatch this film and have a good time with it, even though there are still some plot things that don't quite make sense or line up or add up. It's whatever. I have fun with it now. So that has changed. Now, below that is Justice League. Justice League. Despite it not connecting with BVS anymore, despite it, the flaws, the controversy around it, at the end of the day, for all of its cringy dialogue and what have you, this movie still brought to live action for the first time the Justice League, or at least a version of the Justice League in live action on the big screen, which is still is something that I really liked seeing and enjoying it. And the casting in this is still perfection to me. I still like Ezra Miller in the role of the Flash. I know a lot of people didn't like him in this role, and some people did. But despite it all, I like the spectacle. I like the energy. I like the style. I like how it pulls together all of these characters. I like seeing them banter and bounce off of each other. And it makes me even more excited to see what's going to happen in the Snyder Cut and how that's going to differ, because it's actually going to be in continuity with the movie that came before it. This movie ignores a lot of what was set up in BVS. So that's another reason that it is lower on this tier. But of course, this movie was wrought with controversy, wrought with behind the scenes garbage. And yeah, it shows, but I still love this will still be the first time I've seen the Justice League themselves, these characters on the big screen in live action for the first time, and I can still always go back and revisit that until it is replaced with the Snyder Cut, and we'll see which one truly is better once that comes out. Now here is where Wonder Woman 1984 falls. It is my number 8. While it has so many structural problems, the more you think about it, there are so many decisions in the movie that I still enjoy the movie. I still like the movie. I still like it more than I dislike it. I like all of these movies. None of these movies do I hate. None of these movies do I not like. Again, this is based on how likely am I to rewatch this film. This film has a lot of things, when you think back on it, they don't make sense. There's some strange choices, especially when you think about Chris Pine and how he came back a little bit more, and how it feels the most disconnected a little bit, even though they try to explain it or hand wave away the dialogue that happens in BVS about her stepping away from humanity. This also has a different tone than we've seen the last Wonder Woman film, which I thought fit the character great. And I know that over time things change, but there's, again, a lot of decisions in this. There's a lack of use of even the 80s. Really, what is even the point of it being in the 80s? Because if you take the 80s out of this movie, it doesn't change anything. Not really. You can do this exact same storyline at any point. It could have been the 90s. It could have been the aughts. It could have been the 2010s. It really doesn't affect much. Gal makes some weird choices. There's a lot of disjointedness. It hits you in the feels, even though when you think about it, it kind of takes you out of it. But I'm still more likely to watch it than my number 9, which is Suicide Squad. And again, I like the film. I don't hate it. There's just a lot wrong with it. There's a lot that didn't work for me. There's a lot that, again, I thought the trailers set up actually really well. I thought the trailers for Suicide Squad were actually really good. But of course, again, this is kind of like Justice League, but it had the opposite effect where we know there was a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. David Ayer has been very vocal about it, especially now that the Snyder Cut has been going about, very much avid about campaigning for his cut of the film to actually be released, because the studio basically, for his own words and paraphrasing, butchered his film and completely took it into a different tone, which seemed to be par for the course for the studios around that time, because it was also the studios that really hammered in for Patty Jenkins to have that punch 'em, rock'em sock'em CGI robot fight at the end of her movie, which felt so disjointed from the rest of it. Because I know, at least from what I've been hearing recently, she had tried to push back on that, but it was the studio that wanted to go that route. And then the success and all of that led to Wonder Woman 1984. So I don't know how to feel about that anymore. But either way, Suicide Squad just like had all these characters that had all these opportunities to have a lot of fun, and it never quite hit in a lot of the ways that I was hoping for. I still enjoy it. I mean, Will Smith and Margot Robbie carry this film, and it's just, there's not a lot to it. It's just some action, some dark, grungy action. It doesn't really have much emotional impact except for why am I blanking on his name right now? I can't think of his name. The pyro guy, the pyromaniac. I can't remember his name. His arc was the most compelling out of that entire thing, and apparently he wasn't even originally supposed to die. I don't know. There's a lot of crap, again, with studio involvement that has kind of hampered a lot of these movies. DC's, as many times as they win, they've lost more, and it's always at the hands of their studio. But I still love it, man. I still love this universe. I still have hope for this universe, even despite what I feel is a misstep with Wonder Woman 1984, at least critically. And it doesn't help that it's released during this pandemic, so it didn't happen in theaters, which I think it would have done a lot better if we weren't in our current situation. So given that handicap, I think it turned out pretty okay for what we kind of expected, though a massive disappointment when you compare it to any of the other films, when you compare it to the last Wonder Woman film. It just doesn't hold up to it. I'm more likely again to go watch that rather than go watch Suicide Squad. I don't know. That's just me. Even though a lot of it doesn't make sense, a lot of the emotional stuff, again, when you turn your brain off, the Maxwell Lord stuff and everything between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine carried that film. Honestly, it's very much in line with how I felt about The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought the best parts of that superhero movie was when it wasn't a superhero movie. I thought the best parts of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 were any of the moments that focused on Peter and Gwen's relationship. It helped that those two were dating in real life. I don't know if they still are now, but their dynamic, it was the best romantic comedy I saw all year, and it wasn't supposed to be. Those parts of the movie dramatically outshined every other bit of it. And that's how this movie felt to me as well. The Chris Pine stuff with their relationship, their dynamic, seeing that emotional weight and warmth carry through it, outshined all of the actual superhero bits, all of the action, all of the plot that was supposedly there. This also didn't move the character forward at all, except for, I guess, having her finally move on from Steve Trevor, but you didn't need a movie to do that. It could have just happened. I don't know. Anyway, this has been my ranking. Suicide Squad, unfortunately, is at the bottom of this list now, where it was previously second to last. Yeah. Again, I don't hate it, and I'm excited to see the potential of an Ayer cut and what that's going to do for it, but right now, it's just my least favorite DCEU film. Barely. Just barely. It took me a little while to tweaking this list around to kind of get where I'm comfortable with some of these spots now. So these are my changes. I'd love to know what your rankings of the DCEU are so far. Again, this is the DCEU. This does not include Joker or anything like that. There is a train. I hope you can't hear that. But anyway, guys, sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts, your rankings for the DCEU. How did you feel about Wonder Woman 1984 and how it stacks up against the rest? And we'll carry on that conversation after the video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care, everybody.